Hey, everybody. We are lucky today to have two amazing panelists, Aria Williams, who is the Global Project Manager and Tour Director from Live Nation, as well as Eric Holt, who's the founder of the Lovenoise Group and also an assistant professor at Belmont University. Before we introduce them or allow them to introduce themselves, I'll just say my name is Michael. I'm a part of the content acquisition team at Veeps. We're a media company that's also part of Live Nation. But starting it off with Aria, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm Aria. Thank you for having me. And I'm a global project manager and tour director on the global touring team at Live Nation.
Hello, I'm Eric Holt, as you said before. I'm a founder of the Lovenoise Group, which is an independent concert promotions company based in Nashville, Tennessee, and also teach music business at Belmont University.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to start this one really broad and allow you to take it away in your own words. Maybe start with you, Eric, because we did talk a little bit about this in advance. But can you, for the audience, just define what being a tour promoter is and any of the associated terms or ideas that center around this theme that we have in this panel?
Sure. A tour promoter, and what we discussed and what we talked about is like the concept of a promoter in general. And a promoter in the scheme of a concert, and most of you guys in the audience have probably been to a concert, but there are a lot of individual parts. And the role that the promoter plays is basically the risk taker. So when you put a show on sale, you have to basically buy the talent, and that's the artist that you see. That purchase is typically made through an agent. And the risk in buying that is because you pay in advance, and there are what they call guarantees. And I don't want to get too many details, but those guarantees are based on ticket sales. So the risk is, okay, I think this band can sell 200 tickets. I'm going to pay them on a rate that they sell 80% of those 200 tickets. And the risk is they might sell 105 tickets or sell out and sell 200 tickets. But that risk, the role of the promoter takes that. So in the process of taking that risk, once you buy the talent through the agent, you have to coordinate the tour, and that's placing the acts in the different locations and venues. And then you have to market and sell those tickets to get to that sold out number. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's a great nutshell to start on. Aria, is there anything you'd like to add on that piece? I know it's probably a big part of your job.
No, I think you covered it. That's pretty much it. Sorry if it's loud, by the way. I'm at a venue right now.
Love it.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll ask you then, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of the job?
Oh, that's a loaded question. My favorite is definitely the show itself. I think it's a good reality of all your work. So the show and seeing the artist satisfied, hopefully satisfied, definitely the best part. I think the hardest part is just when you're working with a bunch of different teams and different artists, everyone's different and everyone has different energy and wants different things. So it's hard to juggle that sometimes and just figuring out what works best for that individual.
On that same line, are there any skills or things that you tried to learn before you got into this role that have set you up for success in it?
I think communication is definitely the biggest one because there's so many moving pieces and teams. Like there's the talent side and the business side, production, and so it like goes on and on. So I think just being able to effectively communicate is probably the most important. And then I would say secondly, like being proactive and poised is important as well because things can get crazy very fast, and if you can't balance that without freaking out, then it could get a little difficult.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, Eric, you teach some of this. Is this what you focus on in some of your courses around this topic?
Definitely, definitely. And the stress that comes is, when you're making that risk, you're taking on that risk on a tour. That risk may shift. So you may start off a tour and it's a difficult start. So you don't sell out the shows. It's all negative. You're taking what they call losses, right? You're not meeting your percentages. And then halfway through, for different reasons, it may pick up. And then the second leg of the tour, it all sells out. And then at the end of the day, if you have, let's say, a 20 city tour, it could all balance out that you made 51% profit, and that's a win in this industry. So, the pluses and minuses, just going back to your other questions, some of the pluses, in my view, are the opportunity to service two very different groups. You're servicing the artist, but you're also servicing the fans, right? You want to make sure they have a good experience at the venue. So you want to choose quality venues. You're servicing the artists for the same reason. You want to make sure they have a good experience at the venues. You want to make sure the artists are satisfied with the production and all the elements that make an artist present themselves in a quality way. You also want the fans to receive that information, the lighting, the sound, hot or cold at the venue, all those types of things, that they're in place. And the promoter has to balance all of those things. And sometimes those servicing those needs on those two different sides are in conflict for a lot of different reasons, typically production reasons. But you can, have those issues. And so the ability to communicate, to what Aria explained, is the most important skill you can have in this field, and understanding and being flexible, because you're typically negotiating personalities across a broad spectrum.
That's great. Do you feel there are some misconceptions about your role in this process at times?
I think the two most misconceptions, in my opinion, you make a whole lot of money and it's easy. You can make money, but it's definitely not easy.
Anything on your end, Aria, to add to that? Just misconceptions or?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's a lot of
Well,
nitty-gritty work. I think sometimes it looks really glamorous, and of course the show is aimed to be glamorous, but there's a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears and behind the scenes that goes on. And it's a very, very like large task. There's so many people, especially I'm at a venue right now and you can hear there's just so many people. So it takes a lot.
Yeah.
on that note, so speaking about the different people that you have to service their needs, one of those is the manager of the artist. I recently saw on Twitter the manager for the band that is Nashville-based called Band Camino, and he went a bit in depth, which I've never seen many managers or agents do before, on why they are or are not playing certain markets on their upcoming tour. And I found it to be really illuminating, just that he was able to do that in a public space and do it well and service the fans, but also service the band that he worked for. So generally along those lines, how does a tour get planned or routed? And on that, what data points or details about an artist do you use to help influence those decisions?
There's a lot that goes into it. I think the first is usually on our side, we ask the agent and management team and the artist what they're looking for. Like maybe there's some cities that they want to go to and don't want to go to. Maybe there's some markets that they played before and don't want to play again. Like it can be a number of things. So that's definitely the first place to start, because you don't want to route it and then go back to them and they don't want to do half of the markets. So I think that's the first step. And then history is really good if they've toured before, even if it's different size venues, just looking at, did they sell out the venue in Nashville? Even if it was 1,000 cap less, it's still important. Like if they didn't sell that out, then maybe you shouldn't be going bigger. And so looking at the history is definitely important. And timing, like if you're going right back out, then go to all the markets that you didn't go to the last time.
That's great. Anything to add on to that, Eric? Are there any other maybe social media or streaming numbers that you look at when you're looking at this idea of how and where the band should go?
Yeah, I mean, that history is probably one of the most important things. The manager's looking at that and communicating that to the agent, and the agent is communicating that to the promoter. But typically, depending on what level the band is at, the promoter may already have them on the radar because of their performance at a certain level. If you're a new band and you don't necessarily have a history, just starting off anywhere, even if it's small rooms like 50, 60 people, and still, depending on how that data is measured and how you perform as far as attendance, it can still send a message. One good example of that, it was a new R&B artist that did a small club tour. And for this artist, a small club was 1,000 people. So he did like a 12-city tour, but in every city, the secondary ticket market had 0 tickets for sale. He sold out, but the secondary market was flat, meaning nobody wanted to resell their ticket. And his attendance numbers were like at 100%. Everybody came. So that tells you that, well, people really want to see this artist and they're willing, first time out at any point, to buy the ticket. So that let them know they probably could have played larger shows, but that same type of data could help you out on the other side. You have a new artist plays a venue, all the venues sell out, and on the secondary market, all the tickets are 4 times what they originally were. That tells you, well, maybe we could charge more or charge the same amount in just a larger venue, and this person, has, the following to fill those rooms. So there's different data sets that you look at or can look at, and the size of the room doesn't always matter. Sometimes it's just the activity on how the tickets are purchased and what the audience in that particular city is doing.
And are those details that would make you potentially upgrade a tour or a show? And how quickly do you make those decisions? Is it at on sale, after sell out?
I think it depends. Aria, what's your experience on that, on switching venues?
I definitely think it depends. Sometimes you have the benefit of if you're doing pre-sales, sometimes you can tell, like, if you're selling something out in the pre-sales, then probably not set up for greatness for when it goes on sale in a couple of days. So sometimes it could be a scramble to try to do a venue switch before you go on sale. Usually you do pre-sale like a few days before you would go public on sale. Sometimes that's like a Spotify pre-sale, or there's different partnerships. So I feel like that's really good insight, to watch the pre-sales. And also I think sometimes you can do it after the fact, like maybe you sell out way faster than you expected, and then you do like a venue upgrade and you're saying like, hey, this went so crazy, we're going to this venue, like we have to move it to this venue. And that can be a nice opportunity for the artist as well to have more people come out and see them. But I think you definitely have to play it by ear, because you don't want to upgrade and then you can't fill that venue.
That definitely makes sense. I'm going to pull one question from the audience quickly because I think it's an interesting one. Are there any tools or programs that you're using as a promoter? Anything that is, industry facing that people may have not used before?
I don't know about any new tools, but do you have an
Sorry,
Oh.
I keep getting interrupted by the crew, but I would say Spotify metrics.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. Eric, any tools to add on there? I think I use one called Annalisa, which analyzes Instagram and TikTok engagement levels. So you see the difference between the follower and the number of likes and comments. So things like that are helpful.
A chart matrix, but that, it depends. You can only see so much from that. And an old tool, it's not a new tool, but Polestar is still valuable as well, depending on what level of artist you're looking at. And Polestar it measures ticket sales and ticket histories for club to large size venues in various cities. So that data is very useful as far as the history, especially larger artists like a Drake or something like that. You can kind of see over the years what's happened with that artist, and that's still used.
That's awesome. I saw in your bio, Aria, that you had a passion in talent discovery. Are there any artists that are coming up right now that you're excited about, or any tours that you've seen recently that were, overperformed or just exciting to be at?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this artist named Livianka. She is at like an Afrobeats, pop, R&B. I don't know. She's kind of a multi-genre artist, but we actually had her out as support for this tour that I'm out on now, which is Alicia Keys' tour. So she's been opening, and that was her first ever tour. So we'll look to see if she can do her own tour soon. So it's nice to see her grow. And then Chase Shakur is somebody I'm really excited about as well. He is an R&B singer out of Atlanta, and I think he's going to blow very soon. So I hope he can tour soon as well.
Anyone for you, Eric? Any Belmont students or artists in Nashville that are coming up?
Well, one artist that is, I would say, Nashville adjacent that's doing really, really well, Coco Jones. She's an R&B artist. She's on a Live Nation tour right now, and she's performing very well. You talked about, you know, going to a larger venue, like switching to a larger venue. She just did that with her on sale for the Nashville date. It was at a club level, and then it bumped up to the larger club in the area, and is performing very well. And the reason I'm really interested in seeing how she goes is because I'm really close to her management team, and they're just this textbook, just good teamwork. You know, it's a collaborative effort, and inch by inch, she's been able to extend her brand beyond her start, which was in TV, television, and film, and has some great performances on the festival circuit. And now she's on her tour and kicking butt. So I love to see how she grows.
That's awesome. It's good to hear. I'm also curious about the other side. So when a tour is maybe not going well or something actually happens and you have to cancel, what's the process like there? And generally, do artists carry insurance? Are there any insurances on your side that people get paid back or costs are lost?
You can take that one if you want.
Might be a little hard to answer, but
Uh,
Sorry, I broke up a bit, but yeah, I think it's definitely a case by case situation because there's many reasons and ways that a show or a tour could be canceled. Sometimes it's not even canceled, it's pushed back, but you have to really, redo everything basically. So it really is case by case.
It is, and you know the insurance question. I think it definitely depends on the level of the artist and the event. You know, festivals typically have some type of situation that's a little bit more detailed than like a club thing. Canceling, you know, it depends on why it's canceled, as far as what's communicated and where it's coming from. But the main thing for all parties involved, the venue's reputation, the artist's reputation, the promoter's reputation, is just constant, clear communication to all the areas where you promoted the show. So in the newspapers, you know, on social media. And because of social media, getting the word out about cancellations or adjustments, it's a lot easier than it used to be. And even like the venue switch for Coco Jones, it was once they got the back end, you know, settled, like, okay, this date is moving from this venue to this venue, and everything was secured on the back end. Communicating that change was somewhat quick because of social media. You just switch out the digital flyers and get the message and the word out and change the ticket link, which they did pretty successfully. So it just depends on the why, and then just communicating to the same channels you promoted to. And mainly the ticket buyers, the ticket purchasers.
in line with that, we obviously through the pandemic saw a ton of difficulties around tours changing at first, then being canceled or being brought back even years later. Was hearing for a year or two, even after tour was back, there's so many logistical difficulties. Is that smoothened out, or is it still a pretty heavily congested space? What are you seeing now in the market?
I think it's smoothed out as an understatement compared to what it was, in the midst of the pandemic itself. But I think we're still affected by it, right? Like, I think the mass of shows right now shows how much we were behind. Everyone's trying to tour. Everyone is touring right now. So it really is like a hard space to get in. Like, there's not two, it's the buyer's perspective, endless shows that you can go to, and there's like overlapping shows. Sometimes there's two shows in one night that you'd like to go to. So yeah, I think we're definitely still affected by having to kind of pause for so long, and now everybody's trying to push forward. I think it's still definitely a weird time. I think it may take a little bit.
And to add to that, I would agree. And the challenging part to that is, out of the pandemic, the landscape of venues changed because you had venues that closed. And then in addition to that, you had some, specifically, I would say probably like mid-level artists that were bubbling up that didn't get to take that opportunity to um, realize that bubble. And so when they come back after a year and a half, 2 years, they've kind of been replaced with the new act. And so it's harder to gauge where their ability to sell tickets is harder to gauge where they are, because their peak, which was maybe right before the pandemic or in the middle of it, doesn't necessarily convert to ticket sales because people's attention went somewhere else after the pandemic. And that's happened to several artists. There's been some reporting about that with some bigger names that they thought they could come back where they were, and they had to have pull back and come back and to adjust as far as the size venues and things like that.
Yeah, that's always a difficult process to figure out what happens in these gaps. Are there any publications that you guys follow to learn about what's going on in the industry, whether that be tour promotion specific and live, or even just general music industry knowledge? Where do you learn from when you're actively in the role every day?
I usually do the most common ones, like the industry pubs, but I'll tell you, in the touring world, one of the most important information gathering tools is your phone, and picking up your colleagues and talking on the phone with your colleagues to see what's next, or see what the problem actually was with this issue or that issue, and it helps to pivot quickly when you have that type of information. But yeah.
Aria, anything for you? Any blogs or sites that you go to learn about either artists or what's going on in the industry?
I feel like there's so many. We call them trades, and they're industry trades. And I feel like there's so many now. It's kind of saturated, but I think, like Eric said, definitely like just talking to the people that you know in your network. There's a site called Roster. It's spelled Rostr. And they are really good about giving updates of industry moves. So maybe if an artist signed to a label, or an artist signed to an agency, management switched, artist left a label and went to another one, an artist is dropping an album, like, so more like maybe things that aren't necessarily like headlines. Like the album would be a headline, but maybe not that they switched an agent. So I think that site can be really insightful. I can put it in the chat, actually, what it's called.
No, Roster's great. I think that's the website I spend the most time on every day. Speaking more personally, and either of you can start, but I'd love to hear from both of you. What was the role that you had before you were in tour promotion, and how did it help you catapult into this next phase of your career? Or maybe roles, maybe it's multiple, or maybe you went a different direction and came back.
For me, I was a club promoter.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I think it was a lag there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a lag, but no, please, you start.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I started off as a club promoter, and that kind of got my footing in the industry overall. And I was a student when I first started doing that. I was actually a law student when I first started that, and I kind of got my cut in there in that space, and then I moved on from there. But those skill sets that I learned at that level are the same. That if you're doing a large arena tour, in this industry, it's a lot of hurry up and wait because of production things. But even in the purchasing of talent and the marketing of a show, it's a rush to a certain point, and then you kind of wait, and then you got to rush to the next point, and then kind of wait. But the most satisfying thing about it, and I learned this at the smaller level too, is that completion. You have an idea to bring an artist. The artist gets a contract. You execute the show. You sell tickets. The fans enjoy it. The artist enjoyed it, and that's it. Then it's the next one, and that like kind of process, the starting and stopping, I enjoy that personally because I get bored pretty quickly personally, and it keeps you on your toes and keeps going. And if you're doing a multi-city tour, it's the same thing because every venue is different, and every night is different, and the in between, is the fun. So.
Love that. And how about you, Aria? Any positions that were important in your career trajectory?
Yeah, definitely. My background's in like A&R and on the talent side, and I wanted to get into the touring, the back end of touring, which is Live Nation and promoting as the business side of touring. I wanted to learn that because it's the majority of revenue for artists, and I felt like in order to really be helpful to an artist on any scale and with real integrity, that I needed to understand how the touring business worked in totality. So that's ultimately like what drove me to doing touring on the business side. But yeah, I was an assistant first, and I think it's a great role to do to like soak up. It's like a sponge position, is what I'd like to consider it, and I think it's like the perfect time to get as much information as you can. Um, Sometimes like it may seem like small tasks, but you learn a lot and you can get a lot of connections from being the assistant because you really are the keeper and the right hand woman or man to whoever you're working for. So I think an assistant is, if it's not for you, then I wouldn't say like stay an assistant very long, but it is something that I think is worthwhile, especially at the beginning of your career.
Most definitely. And I think that lines up with a theme in my career that has been constant, which is be kind to the assistants, be kind to the interns, because those people are going to be right alongside or ahead of you in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. It doesn't matter. I used to tour and do merchandising. So just selling t-shirts out at festival tours. And some of the people that I was sitting with or across from are A&Rs at majors. They are tour promoters. They are still on the road in high level roles, and some of them are even musicians. So I think that's a really good point. And to anyone who's watching this and is in that first position that they're in their career, remember that too, because the people that are in this chat and are at this conference, those are your peers, and they're going to be your direct reports. They're going to be the people that you report to, and it's important to keep that. As far as networking goes, I'd say that's the thing that I didn't learn when I was in school, and I didn't have a professor, like what Eric is doing now, to actually guide me through the industry. So I'm curious, those are pretty simple ideas, but I think we talked a little bit about education. Did either of you actually study anything related to music, or was it learning on the road or learning by doing?
I studied business, which music is definitely a business. So I can't say that I didn't learn things that, cater to the music world, but I do think music in itself and entertainment is a lot of learning, like by practice. But school wise, yeah, the basics of business, definitely.
I studied communications, and then I went to law school. So, communications, as Arias mentioned, it's one of the key things at all levels of this industry, just being a good communicator. So I definitely think it comes into play. And, having a legal background helps too, because everything that you see is propped up by a contract, and the negotiation of those contracts at every level is an important skill to have. So it prepared me, but connecting my academic education with the practical pieces of the industry is just beautiful. Like, I love it. Like, it's a great opportunity. But music business schools all over the country are increasing their numbers because the opportunity to learn how to do some of these skills in an academic setting is kind of new, honestly. And you're getting more and more people trained to be concert promoters, to be, talent buyers, to be agents. And I think that's a good thing, obviously, because I teach it.
No, that is a good thing. And I guess that lends to the next question that I saw in the chat. So what's the best way to get started beyond the courses and programs? Did you do any internships? And if so, what did you do and what did you learn?
Me?
Either or. I mean, I think we all interned at some point, right?
Yeah, I actually did not intern at an entertainment company before I got into the business, and just made the road longer. So I advise anyone interested in the entertainment business on whatever side, touring or the agent side, go, get an internship, because that insight and that opportunity to assess if you actually like that thing, it's important. Because one thing I tell students all the time, an internship isn't just a company evaluating you, you're also evaluating the company and the position. So you may think you want to be a tour promoter, but once you have an internship and see what we actually do, you may hate it. So definitely go while you're in school and tap into as many internships as possible so you can fine tune where you really think you fit in the industry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also think sometimes, unfortunately, with entertainment and music, sometimes the internships are limited to like you need to be a student or something like that. But I think if that is the case, and if you're out of school and still want to, get into it, then assistant is a really good position to go for. There's like admin assistants, executive assistants, even coordinators, depending on the place, is similar to assisting. So I think those roles are a good way to like definitely get in and you learn about the company or the network really fast. And then you make connections with them and you can hop around easier at least once you've done that.
That's great. And then I saw one more question, which was, advice for booking a tour for a starting band. I'll give two ideas that I have for friends that are artists and getting started. One of those is called Breaking Sound. So it's a program that is mostly US based, a lot of shows in LA, New York, Nashville, but they bring on up and coming artists and give them a space to perform, is one. And then the other is sometimes surprising, but is So Far Sound. So that's done more anonymously on the front end, but on the back end, you get a complete audience that's paying attention to you and engaging with your music. And they're there as patrons of the arts. They're generally people who want to experience new music. Are there any other platforms or places that you guys both see for developing artists to get their start in live?
There are
I think,
several. Oh, go ahead.
no, sorry. I
No.
was going to say, I think Breaking Sound is a good one, especially in Los Angeles. But I think if you are in California in general, like you're lucky to be in a place that you can pretty much go anywhere, any day of the week, and find some type of live performance just by like a Google search or a social media search. I think that's something that's definitely like a privilege and a benefit of being in a music-based and entertainment-based city, so similar to Nashville and New York or Georgia. There's pretty much always like somewhere that somebody is playing some live music.
Yeah. I would agree. Those two suggestions are really solid. And from that, the main thing you're going to get is data. You're going to get information from people maybe outside of your hometown where you can measure, okay, well, after I do So Far or after I do Breaking Sound, I can come back to that city and actually sell tickets on my own. So using the data that you have available to you through Spotify and the other tools that we mentioned today, that's a good starting point, because nothing can replace the old school get in a white van and taken to the cities where people will receive you. And if that's 20 people, that's a start. If it's 200, that's great. If it's 2,000, that's even better. But you have to kind of get out there and start it. And again, going back to the very beginning of this discussion, you're going to take on some risk. It's going to be a risk involved. But you got to start at some point, and you have more data now than you've ever had to assess where you should go, using Spotify backend information and other playlisting services.
Yeah, and I would add on to that. Anywhere that you see people, and this is true as a promoter or as a band, there's generally going to be some space for music to be involved. So that could be community groups, that could be venues, that could be at your school. I threw concerts in my high school cafeteria, in veterans halls, in churches, in my own backyard, in my own garage, literally garage band shows where we had 100 people show up to the house, and you know police came and all that stuff. But I say that just plainly because don't wait for the opportunity to present itself. You can create the opportunity and you can make those things out of just the tools that are in front of you. And there doesn't always have to be a lot of money involved. You see artists like Passenger, who just got a street, his job or his current career started by him just playing on the street. That's it. And that's not capable. You don't have that capability as every artist. Every artist doesn't have the right tools to just be able to go out and play like a person with a guitar. But yeah, I also want to add that, if you're a starting artist, like, you got to get reps in. You got to practice quite a bit, and you got to get, chances to play in front of people. So, great question. Definitely a great question. I think the next one I saw was about concert archives and Polestar. My experience with concert archives is more of an aggregator, and for past concerts, the idea of recollecting set lists and information about the shows, I use it for that. Polestar has that historical data, but it's actually from the industry. So it's going to tell you ticket counts and data points that were submitted from the actual inside of the industry. Does anyone have anything to add on that?
That's a good distinction there. And that's pretty much the difference.
Yeah, I agree.
College tours and bookings. Are there any resources available for that? Eric, you know of? I think.
If you're asking from an artist standpoint, there are companies that book specifically to colleges. And some of the names escape me now, but there are several.
I was thinking of NACA.
Yeah, NACA. Right? That's what I'm thinking of.
NACA.
If you're an artist, if you are a promoter, a lot of those types of tours, it's really networking. One of the easiest ways to do a college tour from an independent promoter standpoint is just to go to the sororities and fraternities and use that network. And that's at HBCUs or other universities. That starting point is typically the best because those networks are so strong.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's also usually committees, even if there's not a fraternity or sorority, but some sort of, like at my school, there was a committee that put together like the Spring Fest, the homecoming concert. So usually if you can find the committee that is doing events, like maybe not be so specific and looking for concerts, like a committee that does concerts, but whatever committee is handling putting on events for the school, is definitely a good starting point.
Next question I see, because just for everyone's knowledge, we are in the Q&A portion. I just kind of jumped into it, apologize for not letting you guys know we were there, but is about getting involved with a specific band that's going on tour. I often see people interning on tours with bands like Coldplay. I'm not aware of opportunities that are structured that way, but I will say, just from my experience, is that every venue in every city is always looking for staff. And there are opportunities to work the door, to work the merch booth. From a merchandising perspective, there's venue sales, which means the venue hires a merch person. All of those are ways that you're getting involved on the ground floor and you're meeting people. So don't look down on those roles. Don't look down on those opportunities. If they're not going to pay you enough, that's one thing, but for your time and energy. But I would say that the key to getting on tour is to start by getting in the venue that you're at all the time. Any other thoughts there, Eric?
I would add on to that. I just literally had this conversation with a venue manager, a production manager at a venue here in Nashville. He cannot keep stagehands because they always get hired on tours from the venue. Now you say, well, I don't want to be a stagehand. I want to be a concert promoter. But seeing a concert from that perspective is very valuable because you get to see the ins and outs and you get to understand production. And it is a very valuable perspective to have. So as Michael said, go and do that. Another example I have of a job that may not be ideal coming to fruition for a full-time job. One of my former students here at Belmont, she worked security for 2.5 years at a venue here in Nashville. When she graduated from Belmont, she was the assistant venue manager because she already knew everybody and she also knew the processes of everything. And for the sacrifice was being a security guard for 2.5 years, but she also was able to build her network and then also have a couple of internships at other venues. And then when it was time to graduate, she came in at a level that was pretty secure. But that was a smart way to get in because that was the only job that she could have and also get paid while she studied.
I'd say that's definitely a great point. I even see in the chat, if you're in San Francisco, there might be some opportunities being advertised in there for merch seller, runner, and box office. Yeah, I think that's pretty great. Well, we've only got a couple more minutes. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. But maybe I'll start with you, Aria. Any parting thoughts, words of wisdom, places to send people to learn more? Yeah, anything you want to share with the group?
I think Eric's last point is just really important. I think it should be a mentality of like get in where you fit in at the very beginning of your career, and always treat people with respect and be nice to everyone, as we spoke on earlier. And I think it's important to speak to everyone when you walk in a room. All of those things I think can get you really far, but definitely like, especially at these venues, like if you can get a job, and it's usually like temp jobs, it doesn't have to feel so permanent, but if you can make a mark on the venue staff and the venue team, because those are the people that kind of put you in a better place.
That's great. And Eric, anything on your side you wanted to leave the group with?
Just to add to her point about speaking to everybody in the room, it sounds like a small point, but you never know. Like in this industry, like, you know, she's backstage right now. Some of the people that are the decision makers, you would not know it. You wouldn't know by the way they dress, you wouldn't know their position, and you never know. You never know. And another thing is something my grandmother used to say all the time, you know, a closed mouth does not get fed. So articulate and have a vision for yourself and communicate that vision to where you want to be. So if you're pushing speakers and you're a stagehand for a tour and some random person you're having a conversation and they might be Aria and she's like, well, what do you want to do? You're a student, you're doing this. Let them know, well, one day I want to be a concert promoter, because that person might help you skip a few steps, you know, if they see themselves in you. And you have a clear vision and a clear work ethic. So don't be afraid to articulate what you want to, where you want to be, and don't be ashamed about where you are, if you're a student, a stagehand, or a security guard.
Absolutely. And thank you both for your expertise and wisdom on this topic. It's actually, I've learned a bunch of things even while sitting here. It's been a minute since I've been truly in the tour promotion game, and I really loved that. And so, yeah, just wanted to say thank you. And to everyone who was watching, thanks for spending your time with us. There's a lot of great programming today, and hope that this conference and event was really helpful for you.